first that I'll go over, and then we'll go right into the 10.11 notes for today. So this was the homework from last night where you were rewriting each equation in slope-intercept form and then graphing it. So just to kind of go through an example together, since I wasn't here to do that, we see that it is currently in point-slope form. To get it into slope-intercept form, we remember that means y equals mx plus b. So I want to distribute whatever is sitting in front of the parentheses. That's what you want to distribute to both things inside the parentheses. So in this case, that would be 1/3 going into the x and into the negative 6. So when I do 1/3 to x, it's just 1/3 x. But 1/3 times negative 6, we can use our calculator to help us with that. It is going to be negative 2. And then from there, the left-hand side just comes straight down, y minus 4. The right-hand side is now this fraction, 1/3 x minus 2. And we're getting closer and closer to it looking like y equals mx plus b. The right-hand side kind of looks like it, but we can't leave that negative 4 there because it should be y equals all by itself. So that's why we add 4 to both sides. That cancels out so that you have y equals 1/3 x plus 2. So this is the equation in slope-intercept form, and now we have to graph it. So just to remind you how to graph, we always start with the y-intercept. So that would be up here at 2, 0, 2. Okay, so that's this point here. Then you look at the slope, 1/3, and since it's 1/3, you would go rise 1 and run 3. So you want to go up 1 and right 3 and put a dot. You can do that again, up 1 and right 3 and again put another dot. So as long as you have like 2 or 3 points, I would say, okay, that's good. Connect them with a line, with arrows, and there is our graph. Okay, so that's how you had to do that for all of these questions, same idea. The only thing you want to, that each one is kind of slightly different with, is what number does it end up being once you distribute, and then you have to add or subtract whatever's sitting here with the y. So today we are going to do something similar to this as well, except now we're learning about one last form, and that's called standard form. But hopefully with these, this is the answer key, so if you did want to go through any more of these, we can do that before your next quiz or next test, so that these are all things we can go over. I can also put them on Canvas so that you can check over your work on these. Alright, so that's all for the 10.10 homework. The back page did have a lot of review, so the whole first part, you're just writing it in point slope form, and these are the easy kind, where they already give you the slope and the y-intercept, the slope and a point. So once you have it in point slope form, then it says, can you write it also in slope-intercept form? So you're doing more of that practice that you just did on the front page, where you have to distribute, like 6 times x would be 6x, 6 times negative 3 would be negative 18, and then you subtract 4 to get to this point, y equals 6x minus 22. And that's the case for both of these. And then the bottom part, same thing. But it's a little bit more work because first you have to find the slope using the formula. Remember, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That's the slope formula that you needed to use on both numbers 8 and 9 first, and then you had to use that slope with one of the 2 points. It does not matter which point you chose, and I chose the first one, 2, 7, but just make sure you put those in the right spot. Then we're ready to put it into slope-intercept form, where you're going to distribute the 11 and then add 7 to finish up. So you do get the answer in y equals mx plus b as well. Both answers are there for numbers 8 and number 9. So again, if you needed to see this in more detail, I'm going to put this on Canvas so that you can see the answer key as well, and then we can go over in more detail when I get back. Okay, so moving on to the 10.11 notes, everyone go ahead and turn to this. If you still need a second to get this out, then you can have a sub pause this so that you guys can get ready for these notes, and then let's go through it together. So we start off with now, just a recap. We've done a lot of different forms so far. The first one that we learned about was slope-intercept form. That's y equals mx plus b. Okay, then it says, well, what does the m represent? What does the b represent? So m, remember, was slope, and the b is the y-intercept. And that helped us with graphing. We were able to use the slope formula. We were able to do lots with this form, with graphing, with tables, with points, all of those different things. But now there's a new form that we learn about, which is called standard form. It's the last type of form. I know yesterday and on Tuesday we covered point slope form, which was the second one. That one is not used as much as slope intercept form, but standard form also does come up quite often. So standard form looks like this: ax plus by equals c. So it kind of uses a, b, and c as like these things called the coefficients, or the numbers in front of the variables. But notice that there's no y-intercept or slope. So m and b are nowhere in this equation. So we can't just say, oh, if someone said, what's the slope of this equation? We wouldn't just know right off the bat. Same with the y-intercept. So here are some examples with numbers. You could have something like 3x plus 2y equals negative 11. I could have negative x plus negative 4y equals 7. And you could write so many more examples where, like this one, the number doesn't show, but it is still, you know, negative 1. You might see another one where, what if the y, like 12x plus y equals 1? The y might not have a number in front of it, so it's just a 1. And the coefficient, that c at the end, can be any number, positive or negative or even 1. You won't see 0 as often, but it can also be 0 at times. So it says here, if our linear equation is written in standard form, we can always rewrite it in slope-intercept form so that we can identify the slope and the y-intercept, because oftentimes it's not possible to see, well, what are they, so that you can then graph it or do whatever else you need to. So let's practice this. On every single question, our goal is to solve for y. Get the y all by itself. That's your goal. But you're always going to ask yourself first, can you add or subtract first? So try to either add or subtract, then multiply or divide if needed. And you'll see what this looks like when we get started, because it is kind of doing like the opposite of PEMDAS, or order of operation. That's why we use adding or subtracting first. So when I see this equation, the x is in the way and the 3. Both of those need to get out of there so I can get y by itself. Okay, so if I'm trying to get my y by itself, first thing I'm going to do, remember I said add or subtract first, is I need to get rid of this x. And since x is a positive x, I have to subtract it. But whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. Make sure you're doing it to the opposite side of the equal sign, not with this 3y. So now that I have it at this point, the x's are gone. I bring this 3y down, because the plus sign just means positive. And then we have equals 9 minus x. So when I see that, I could write 9 minus x, but remember, we're trying to write it in y equals mx plus b, so try to put the x one first. So with the sign and the number, whatever is in front of x, you would write the whole thing in front, and then you would do plus 9, because the 9 is just kind of hanging out by itself. We couldn't combine those. This doesn't become like 9x or negative 9x. We can't combine those two because one's a number and one's an x. And then we're ready to divide by 3. And we want to divide each thing by 3. That's why I kind of split it up separately like this. And these 3's cancel, which is what I wanted, because I want y by itself, which it is now. And when I write down my answer for this, it can help if you sneak in a little negative 1 with that negative next to the x, so that this becomes negative 1/3 x plus 3. Okay, and that's it for letter A. So let's try a few more of these examples. They're all the same idea, but the more you practice these, the easier it gets. So let's try another one. This time the 4x, we need to move out of there. So we subtract 4x from both sides. That gives me 6y to bring straight down an equal sign. And then remember, put the negative 4x part first, and then the plus 8. Okay, now the 6 is in the way. It's being multiplied to y, so I need to divide it. And that means divide every single term by 6, so that it cancels here. So y is all by itself. And then negative 4 over 6, you can use your calculator to reduce that, but it is negative 2/3 x. Same with 8 over 6, that can reduce as well. That becomes 4 over 3. So this is the final answer. I know it looks kind of crazy with the fractions, but that's how you would leave your final answer. Y equals negative 2/3 x plus 4/3. Okay, and then here are a few more. Start by subtracting 3x from both sides again. And we have the 3x's are gone. We bring down this time a negative 2y because there's a negative attached to that 2. And then again write the negative 3x part first, then the plus 15. Okay, now we have to divide. So we're dividing everything by negative 2. So y equals, now two negatives like this makes a positive. So this would be 3 halves x. And then 15 over 2, it's a positive 15 over a negative 2. So this would become a minus 15 over 2, like this. Or you could write it as a decimal instead. That's up to you. If you did do that, it'd be like 7.5, minus 7.5. Okay, so that's it for letter C. Okay, and now we're going to try letter D. So we have 4x plus equals 1. This one's a little bit easy. Let's see why. When I go to subtract 4x from both sides, because again, you always want to add or subtract first so that you can get the y by itself, you want to move that whole x term out of there. So you want y equals, and then again, put the negative 4x first, and then the plus 1. Now, usually we have to like divide at the end by whatever number is sitting in front, like it was here and all of these, but y doesn't have anything sitting in front of it, so it's done. There's nothing else to do there. That's it for letter D. And then E and F, just more of the same thing again. So let's try just one more together, and then you can try out F kind of on your own, and you can have this pause the video so that you can get a chance to try it, and you can always check your work on that. So we have to subtract 6x on this one because we are trying to get rid of everything that's with the 3y. Okay, so actually it's a negative 3y. Bring that down. Negative 6x comes first, and then minus 9. So just make sure you're kind of recopying whatever is on the right-hand side there. And now we're dividing everything by negative 3. So the numbers cancel. We just have y equals negative 6 divided by negative 3 is 2x, and then negative 9 divided by negative 3 is plus 3. This one was a little bit nicer in terms of the numbers. No decimals, not even any negatives because all of them turn positive. That's the final answer. Okay, and then finally for letter F, if you'd like to try this one on your own, you can have pause it, or you can kind of follow along. I'll go through this last example before we try the back page, which is more of the same. But last one, you want to subtract 2x from both sides, bring down the 5y, then bring down the negative 2x before the negative 10. Just keep the signs with each term, and then divide by 5 to finish up. Divide everything by 5 so that your final answer is y equals negative 2/5 x minus 2. This would be the final answer. Okay, so that was kind of on all of those. There were 6 examples there. All of them are very much the same, kind of really repetitive with can you move the x term onto the other side first, then divide by whatever is in front of the y, whatever number is in front of the y if there's a number there. And when you write it out, remember it should go the x first, then the number by itself, because it's like y equals mx plus b. And now this is perfect for us to be able to graph it. So that's exactly what we're going to do on the next page. On the back, it's going to do the same thing, but we're going to then practice graphing. So let's try a few of those together, and then you should have some time for homework like usual. So example 2 says, rewrite the following equations in slope-intercept form and graph it. So this time we have to add 4x to both sides because it was negative, and you always do the opposite sign of it. So if it's negative, I have to add it, and then bring down the 6y, bring down the 4x,